Hello everyone, welcome to this webinar on applications of real-time PCR for rapid diagnosis of communicable and non-communicable diseases. I am Dr. Shoman Bera from the School of Life Sciences, B.S. Abdul Rahman Crescent Institute of Science and Technology, Chennai. Hope you are all doing good, you are healthy, and you are safe in this challenging time. True that nowadays every talk, every discussion, every webinar like this one starts with one word and ends with the same word. Corona, COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2. It is a difficult time, isn't it? But I know we are not going to give it up. As rightly told by one of our great scientists and our beloved former president, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, we should not give up and we should not allow the problem to defeat us. Let these few words be the main mantra of our discussion today. First, for the next an hour or so, we are going to discuss the basics of the real-time PCR based diagnosis of human diseases. This is so relevant now since we all are facing this health crisis of COVID-19 outbreak. As we do not have any vaccine so far, the only way out there is to detect the disease in the affected patients and isolate them, put them under quarantine, and doing the same with all the persons who might have contacted. Um, it is like containing the disease is right now the only available policy we can employ. No vaccine yet. We have to detect it, and for this detection or for diagnosing the disease, also, we do not have many options. Either serological tests, means those antibody based kits, rapid test kits, or the real time PCR based kit. The lecture today will throw light on this later part, that is, how the disease diagnosis is made through real time PCR. These are the broad topics of today's lecture, which is arranged keeping in mind the diverse background and levels of all the participants. We will first see how polymerase chain reaction or PCR works. We will see reverse transcriptase PCR, and then we will see the real-time PCR. All of their working principles. And then finally, we see the application of real-time PCR in disease diagnosis, emphasizing on the COVID-19 diagnosis. So first, the basics of polymerase chain reaction or PCR. It is believed that the technique of PCR has revolutionized the holistic approach of molecular biology. Many of the DNA related work, the recombinant DNA technology, cloning, gene therapy, drug development, disease diagnosis, genome sequencing and mapping, forensic sciences, in the evolutionary biology, and who can forget this technique has brought back those mighty dinosaurs to life, and the rest is the history. Well, Michael Crichton and Steven Spielberg did realize the power of this technique, isn't so? Everything is now utilizing the potential of this particular technique, the PCR. Before going to discuss its working principle, let us remember its inventor, Dr. Kary Mullis, who was a chemist in Cetus Corporation, and he needed to sequence a piece of DNA. And sequencing needs a lot of DNA which he was finding difficult to manage. He was thinking how to. And then when he was traveling by his car, the story goes like this, he got this idea of amplifying a particular DNA segment by changing the temperature of the reaction looking at the farthest hills. And rest is the history. He was awarded with Nobel Prize in Chemistry for this great invention. So the principal idea behind PCR is to generate millions of DNA molecules which are identical in their sequences. It is just like how I make these figures. Taking one of these molecule, I just press Ctrl C, copy, and then Ctrl V, paste. So it is just like the same procedure, making a copy of one molecule of DNA or one DNA fragment and making several copies of it. Now, what is there in the name? polymerase. Since the only enzyme used in this reaction is DNA polymerase, it is polymerase. And why chain then? This is because the product of the first reaction is the substrate of the subsequent reaction. The product of this second reaction is the substrate of the third, and so on. It goes on like a chain of reactions, hence the name polymerase chain reaction. Now, to understand PCR, let us first see the requirements of this reaction. The template DNA is the DNA which we want to make copies of. So this piece of DNA we need to isolate or cut out from some suitable sources. Next are the primers. These are the oligonucleotides, something around 18 to 30 base pair long, and they are single-stranded. They have complementary sequences to the portion of the template DNA which we want to amplify. We'll see to it little later. DNTPs, as we know, they are the building blocks of DNA. DNA polymerase looks into the nucleotide sequences in the template DNA and picks up the complementary nucleotides one after another, stitch them together, and a new DNA strand will be formed. Now, in case of PCR, we will use a specific polymerase, a thermostable enzyme from the thermophilic bacteria Thermus aquaticus, which makes it possible to run the PCR at high temperatures. Talking about the temperature, we will use a specific machine. This is the machine, a picture, a typical thermocycler, which is programmable. It consists of temperature blocks to control the reaction temperatures. As we are talking about the thermostable DNA polymerase, it is heat stable, which can withstand temperatures of boiling water. The original PCR was invented by Kary Mullis. He had to use the regular E. coli DNA polymerase. So every time the temperature of the reaction rises, the enzyme denatures, again the enzyme had to be added. So this difficulty was overcome by using the Taq DNA polymerase, or the DNA from this thermophilic bacteria, which can withstand almost boiling water temperature, where its optimum polymerization activity is at 72 degrees centigrade. We might know the basics of DNA polymerizations, where the parent DNA or the template DNA is a double-stranded DNA. And these two strands are held together by the hydrogen bonds between the complementary nucleotides in the two opposite DNA strands. During the replication or the process of new DNA synthesis, as in this case of PCR, the template DNA will be denatured. That is, the hydrogen bonds between the two DNA strands break open. Now they are single-stranded template DNA. A primer will bind and DNA polymerase will synthesize a new DNA strand by joining the nucleotides following the complementary sequences present in the template strand. So from one double-stranded DNA we are getting two new double-stranded DNAs. So where comes the primers here in the whole process of DNA, as well as in the DNA synthesis, as well as in the PCR? DNA polymerase is a versatile enzyme which is synthesizing the DNA molecule, but no one is perfect in this universe. It can stitch up or polymerize nucleotides, but it needs a pre-existing polynucleotide strand to the 3' OH end of which the polymerase can add new nucleotides. This function is performed by the primers. One more essential function of primers are defining the segment of the template DNA which the Taq polymerase will amplify. As we see here, if this is the DNA strand that we are having, and it is having two ends like this 5' and the 3' end, as we know, and then the opposite strand runs anti-parallelly. So this is the 5' and this is the 3' end of this strand, and the 5' and 3' end of the opposite strand, and both the strands are joined together by the hydrogen bonds between the complementary nucleotides present in these two strands. So during this, for example, this is the region that we need to amplify. This is the region of the whole DNA. The total DNA can be very long, but this is the only portion we are interested in amplifying. So what we will do, we will first let the primers to bind. That means we will first denature this double-stranded DNA, and then we will use these two primers. What is these two primers? One forward primer. This is actually the forward primer, which will define the 5' end of the new strand, and the other one is the reverse primer, defining the 3' end of this new strand. So this is the defining the 5' end. This is the defining means it will demarcate the starting point, or this 5' end of the new DNA. 5' end of the new DNA. Another critical parameter of PCR is the temperature settings, which will be repeated for many times. So what are these temperature cycles that we are going to use? First is the denaturation step, where the template DNA is denatured, or two strands are separated into single-stranded DNA by heating the reaction at around 95 degrees centigrade. Then the reaction temperature is brought down to something around 50 to 60 degrees centigrade, which is just enough to bind the primers to the single-stranded template DNA, as we have seen before. The specific temperature is known as the annealing temperature, and this step is also known as the annealing step. So the first step was the denaturation step, the second step is the annealing step. The third step is the extension step, the next step. This is the extension step, where using the primer and the DNTPs added in the reaction, the DNA polymerase will synthesize the new DNA strand. The DNA polymerase will copy the complementary sequence of the template DNA into the new DNA strand. So alright, so enough talking, let us see it in action. What is happening here? That let us assume that this is our template strand, the double-stranded DNA, which is, and this is the portions that we need to amplify. So the first thing that we have discussed is denaturing the strand. So we will denature it, temperature increase, the two strands are denatured, and these are the two end of our desired DNA fragment. And then we will allow the primer to bind the annealing temperature and then let them extend it. So the primers is binding here, one primer is binding here, extending it, the other primer is binding here, extending it in this direction. So this is the first cycle, where at the end of the first cycle, denaturation, annealing, extension, we are getting two molecules of DNA. Now the second, again the denaturation cycle, denaturation step, where we are getting these 4 DNA templates out of these 2 DNA molecules denatured, and then again the annealing and extension, annealing, extension, annealing and extension from each of the template strand. Just note here that although in this particular on this particular template you have the extension goes beyond the region of the interest, but here on this template this end is already defined, so the extension will start from here and end it to this defined region. The same is here. Next step, that means this is the second cycle, the next cycle, where each of these 4 double-stranded DNA molecule will again denature, forming 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8 templates. Each of them will work as a template DNA. Again, then we will repeat the annealing and the extension step, where the same process will take place, like it will extend, then again it will extend this way, and on every strand, on all the 8 template strand, the extension will take place. So at the end of the third cycle, this will be the scenario where out of all these 8 DNA molecules, we will be getting these 2 DNA products, which will be our desired length of DNA fragment. So one thing is that first, second, third cycles, after the end of the first cycle, we'll be getting 2 molecules, 4 molecules, 8 molecules. So One interesting fact here is that as in the first we are starting with one molecule of DNA, which after the two different temperature cycle is giving four DNA molecules. So the DNA of interest here is amplified by a power of 2 for each PCR cycle. For examples, after 5 cycles of PCR with the DNA template, the reaction will end up with 2 to the power 5 or 32 copies of DNA. We can easily now imagine what is the power of this particular reaction. So usually the PCR reaction is carried out for approximately something around 35 to 40 cycles. At the end of the 40 cycles, you can achieve 2 to the power 40 DNA molecules of your target sequence, which is something like this huge number. So this is a representation of agarose gel electrophoresis. This technique is regularly used for analyzing the PCR products. Different sizes of the PCR product will produce different banding patterns on the gel. You can analyze the band intensities to compare the amplification folds between two lengths. Like here you can see that one band is high, very intense, where these other bands are not that so. So the amplification fold depends on the starting number of the template DNA. Higher the number of templates, higher the amplification, and higher the band intensity on the gel. So this is about interpreting the PCR results. So next, before discussing the real-time PCR, let us see one more variation of PCR, that is reverse transcriptase PCR. What is this reverse transcription or reverse transcriptase PCR? By definition, reverse transcription is the conversion of RNA to DNA. To be more specific, the complementary DNA or cDNA. By the help of an enzyme, reverse transcriptase. We'll see how RT-PCR or reverse transcriptase PCR is performed, and also under what circumstances we need to perform RT-PCR. Friends, one thing we must not confuse with the short forms which are tagged with these experiments. Conventionally, reverse transcriptase PCR is RT-PCR, whereas real-time PCR should be called by the full name real-time PCR, or many times as qPCR, where Q stands for quantitative PCR. So when reverse transcription and real-time PCR is combined, it can be designated as small r, then capital R, capital T PCR, RT-PCR, or you can say QRT-PCR. So first, how the RT-PCR works. Here, actually we are going to analyze how many mRNA are present for a particular gene. So the cells and tissues we will use, and then we will collect the whole mRNA from these cells or tissues. There are different protocols, reagents are there which will specifically isolate the RNAs or the mRNAs. Now here we are seeing one feature, that this mRNA is actually having a stretch of adenine nucleotides. A stands for the adenine nucleotide. So there is a poly A tail. It is called the poly A tail. Now this is the usual normal feature of any eukaryotic mRNA, which we are going to use. This particular feature we are going to use to reverse transcribe it. We need this reverse transcriptase enzyme and a primer, that is this oligo DT primer, which is a stretch of thymine nucleotides. So being complementary to each other, these adenine and thymine nucleotides will just pair up with each other. So it will now pair up with this poly A tail of our mRNA. And when this reverse transcriptase is present, it will just extend this particular primer, making a copy of DNA, which is known as the first strand cDNA. So this reverse transcriptase is the enzyme which can use RNA as a template and making DNA as the product. Now the first strand cDNA is synthesized, and this RNA-DNA hybrid can be directly used in the PCR reaction, where the first strand cDNA will form the second strand and then proceed to take part in the subsequent cycles. So this way, most of the RNA population collected from the samples can be converted to complementary DNA. Alright, we have seen how PCR works, how reverse transcriptase PCR works. Now let us see the real-time PCR. The real-time PCR, the name signifies that we can monitor the amplification reaction in real time. This means during the reaction. No need to wait till the end of the reaction. Here, some fluorescent molecules are added to the reaction mix, and we need to fit a fluorescence detector within the thermocycler. The reaction is designed in such a way that as the DNA amplification is taking place with successive PCR cycles, a corresponding increase in the fluorescence intensities will also be evident, which can be detected and analyzed. We'll see how. So as we are talking about this real-time monitoring of by measuring the fluorescence, one of the approaches used DNA intercalating agents. Initially, ethidium bromide was used, which intercalates between the major groups of the DNA and fluoresces when excited by specific wavelengths of light. So as the number of double-stranded DNA in the reaction increases, more and more ETBR intercalation, more is the fluorescence detected. So this is the scenario what I am talking about. So as the DNA extends, more and more ethidium bromide is intercalated. Now you can imagine that one DNA molecule, this many of ETBR intercalation. If there is more and more DNA copy numbers, more and more ETBR intercalations, and more is the fluorescence. And this is the curve we are talking about. So let us, if this on the x-axis we have the cycle number, ETBR fluorescence on the y-axis, it will increase like this way with the increasing cycle number. Nowadays, ETBR is replaced by other intercalating agents like cybergreen. The principle remains the same, but the problem with the intercalating agents is that they can give non-specific signals. Any double-stranded nucleic acid, such as the primer dimer, they can produce this background noise. One solution to this problem is the use of fluorescent probes. We'll see it how. This is what actually use of these fluorescent probes. Tachman probe is one such fluorescent probe designed as a nucleic acid hybridization probe. It is also known as the 5' nuclease assay. Here the probe consists of an oligonucleotide labeled with a fluorescent reporter at one end and a molecule at like a quencher molecule at the other end. Okay, this is the quencher molecule and this is the reporter molecule. Why? When both are present together, the quencher and the reporter in the same oligo, the fluorescence from the reporter cannot be measured. It is quenched or suppressed. The probe is designed in such a way that its sequences are complementary to any sequence internal to the region flanked by the forward and reverse primer. The PCR proceeds as usual and the oligonucleotide probe binds to the target sequence in the annealing step here. As the Taq polymerase extends from the primer, its 5' exonuclease activity is actually start to degrade the probe, and it eventually releases the quencher from the reporter. A signal is thus generated, which because now the reporter is free to generate the signal, which increases. This signal increases in direct proportion to the number of starting molecules, and fluorescence can be detected in real time as the PCR proceeds. As the strand synthesis continues, the probe will also be released eventually. So, although it is costly in comparison to cybergrain based dyes, it is simple, it is fast and gives fewer background noises. So this flowchart of real-time PCR, see here, there are three phases in real-time PCR. The first, the initial stage where the amplified DNA is low, which is hard to detect, negating the other background noises. As the reaction continues and the DNA copy number increases exponentially, so as the fluorescence readings. And then the final stage where the increase in the fluorescence becomes steady as the reaction comes to an end. Let us see in this diagram what is actually happening. Either we are using the cybergrain or Taqman probes. We will measure the fluorescence. As the DNA accumulates during the early exponential phase of the reaction and a fixed fluorescence, this is the initial stage. This fluorescence threshold is set. This fluorescence threshold is set above the baseline known as the threshold value. The cycle number where each DNA sample crosses this fixed threshold, like here, this is the cycle number and this is the fluorescence. Where this fluorescence is crossing the threshold value, it is known as the C2 value or the threshold cycle. The value of the CT will depend on the starting number of target DNA. The lower the initial DNA copies, the more cycles will be required to reach the threshold. So that is the principle of analysis. From the various CT values, a log graph is prepared from which an unknown DNA concentrations can also be calculated. We are not going to that part of calculations, but this is the thing that we need to understand here, the CT values, where the fluorescence, this signal is crossing the threshold, it is the CT value. So higher the number of the starting material, faster or earlier the rise of the fluorescence signal from the threshold, and correspondingly the CT values will be plotted. Alright, we have discussed the circumstances where RT-PCR means the reverse transcriptase PCR and the qPCR are employed. But now, most urgent requirement of the time, the COVID-19 detection. Can you identify this picture? Obviously, it's written at the bottom. It is the city of Wuhan, where actually this particular COVID-19 was reported the first time, the first few cases. Now, some chronological data I am presenting before you. So, friends, here the December 31, 2019, the first China alerted WHO for this unusual pneumonia. We still didn't get the name. January 30, WHO declared the outbreak as global emergency. Then March 10, it is declared as a pandemic. March 20, global death toll crosses 10,000. March 23, we went for the lockdown. May 4 until today, total cases in India is approximately 40,000. So, friends, all this data, the number of patients affected in countries, different countries or the different times, getting this number is possible because we have diagnostic techniques, mainly this qPCR detection technique. Well, here are a few more numbers. I do not want to scare you with these numbers, but all I want you to realize that this is only possible, getting the number is also only possible because of the diagnostics that have been executed all over the world at varying pace and numbers. And most reliable among all the diagnostics is the qPCR. Some more related informations. Again, we will not go into detail of this. We know this is the virus is the RNA virus. Its genome is RNA. It is related to the coronavirus, which caused actually a worst SARS epidemic in 2003. SARS-CoV-2 genetic sequences are already made available in the GISAID database, construction of which is It is actually a very significant achievement, because until unless we got these informations, um, we don't have the full genetic information. So now we have all the genetic informations. We can do a lot of studies. We can design drugs. We can, at least we can design the primers and so on. There are some comorbidities with these COVID-19 patients, which increases the risk of the patients. And most importantly, still today, we do not have any effective vaccines. Well, how we start these diagnosis things? First, the sample has to be collected. So this is actually the flowchart, the collection of the sample. Uh, It is done by the various methods like nasopharyngeal swabs or sputum collection. This nasopharyngeal swabs or the collection of the sputum is valid during the first few days of the infections. But as the infection proceeds to lungs, the cuff released or the suction catheter is used to collect the deep throat samples. Now, how to prepare for the test? The sample is treated with specific reagents that remove contaminants like proteins and fats, and the RNA is extracted. This extracted RNA is a combination of the patient's genetic material and, if present, the coronavirus RNA. These RNA molecules are then reverse transcribed. RNA molecules means both the patient's own RNA molecule and the coronavirus RNA molecules. They are reverse transcribed and amplified using the specific primers, like what we have discussed. Then the fluorescence signals are detected. Tagman probes are the usual probes which are used for the in the kits for more accuracy. Finally, the results are analyzed. The PCR run may be completed within 2 to 3 hours, but the whole process of starting from the sample collection and preparation and then the data analysis and report making can take as long as 10 to 15 hours. We will now see the experimental design for SARS-CoV-2 testing using qPCR. It is designed for qualitative testing. So remember this, it is a qualitative testing, means whether positive or not. The word of caution here is that negative results not always guarantee that the person is free of disease. The test has to be repeated once or twice, meeting all the criteria for a negative results. Then only the patient will be declared negative for the infection in the final report. So for SARS-CoV-2 detection, all the diagnostic kits will include the primer set for minimum 2 viral genes, just to make sure it's not only one viral genes that will be amplified and tested. To double confirm the results, sometimes 3 viral genes are also targeted, and these genes are listed here. Some of the popular genes are listed here: the envelope glycoproteins, the helicases, or the RNA polymerases, and out of which at least 2 molecules are targeted, 2 genes are targeted. Then the primers for a housekeeping gene, which is any human housekeeping gene, is also included. This serves as a control for the proper sampling, meaning when you are collecting samples, the nasal swabs or the sputum, the human DNA must be present there along with the housekeeping gene, so it will act as a control for the experiment. The Tachman probe is used in most of the kits. To validate the results of the test, several experimental controls have to be included, and PCR should be performed with these controls. So this is a very important part of the test, designing the controls. For example, there is a no template. To confirm there is no contamination, positive template to check all the assay reagents and conditions are working. Housekeeping control to check yes, the template DNA is present in all the samples. Negative extraction control to check for any cross contamination or to see the sample extraction worked or not. Let us make it a little clear. The no template control means the reaction tubes where no sample cDNA or template is added, such as remaining all the other reagents such as the primers, the Taq polymerase or the housekeeping primers, everything will be there during the PCR. This tube should not show any change in the fluorescence signal because no template DNA, no amplification, no change in the signal. And then we can set the threshold level. Next is the negative control. The sample PCR here with the negative control should run flat with the viral gene primers as there is no virus, it is a negative control. But with the housekeeping gene primers, the negative sample should also give signals. Why? Because during the sample collection, it is obvious to collect the exudates containing the patient's own body cells. So the presence of the housekeeping gene is a confirmation of collection and also the proper extraction procedure, although the patient is negative. Now, for a positive control, in this set we are adding the positive templates along with all the primers, the viral gene primers and the housekeeping gene primers in separate tubes should give two separate curves, and we got individual CT values. The dashed line is for the housekeeping. So if a person is detected, yeah, so this is the CT values for the both the COVID-19 primer and the housekeeping primer. If a person is affected, the samples collected from him or her will resemble the red lines presented here. Both the curves for the viral genes and the other one for the housekeeping gene should be there in the patient sample to report it as a positive case. So this is how the raw data in the PCR looks like. Well, how to interpret the results and prepare the reports from these results? We will see that now. Remember one thing, that all the samples collected from the individual should show housekeeping gene expression. Alright, so in this is how the result is interpreted. We are taking this example of having two different primers set. That means two different viral gene is targeted and amplified, along with the housekeeping primer set, which is actually targeting one human gene. And then we will see the result, report and actions of our findings. In the first case, say for example, we have tested positive, that means the fluorescence came for this primer set 1. It is positive for the primer set 2 also. It is positive or sometimes can be negative also for the housekeeping gene. Result, what we should write? If all three are positive, we should write it is detect. Report, what we should write? Detected. Then accordingly the action should be, the health authority should be alerted and then reported, and the necessary actions to be taken, the medications can be started. Now if the housekeeping primer, it is here giving this negative, then the test can be repeated again. If again in the repetitions, if these two primers are positive, these primers are negative again, then it will be also considered as a positive case because of repeatedly two primers, or sometimes the housekeeping primer set can be changed to some other housekeeping. Next, when if only one is positive, that means out of these two COVID-19 primers only one is coming positive, the other one is negative. Housekeeping can be positive or negative. Then the result is indeterminate. Report is also indeterminate. What is the actions? You have to repeat the test again. Again, if it is repeated, like one is positive, the other one is negative, then you have to keep that patient under very strict observation. Obviously quarantine, and if some symptoms are developing, then obviously he has to go for the treatment. Then the next case, if it is negative for one of the primer, second primer, so both the primers are giving negative fluorescence, that means no fluorescence is there, and then the housekeeping primer is positive. Obviously SARS-CoV-2 is not detected. All the preparations are good because the housekeeping gene is showing the signal. It is not, the report will be written as SARS-CoV-2 not detected. Report to the health authorities, and depending on the patient's health conditions, the doctor may ask him to come back within 2 weeks for a repeated test, or otherwise he or she will be declared as negative. Now in the last case where primer 1, primer 2 as well as the housekeeping, all three are negative, but you have suspected the patient, so then what is the result you will be declaring? Invalid. Test is invalid, report is invalid, and the actions, you should repeat the test because you have a reason to suspect the individual either by looking at the symptoms or by tracing the contacts. Then you have to repeat the results. And if again, one caution here is that the housekeeping primer is negative. Okay, so everyone can ask the questions like whether your preparation is proper or not, so that is why the test is declared invalid. Well, this is how we are actually making the report card, and then based on the report card the actions are planned and devised. So this is how the COVID-19 detection by the PCR based methods, qPCR based methods, and depending on the results obtained in the graphs that we have seen, this kind of reports can be interpreted. Although we have focused solely on this COVID-19 detection, the similar steps and protocols are followed for most of the qPCR based pathogen detections, viral, bacterial, or other communicable and non-communicable microbes. It is actually highly sensitive, quick, and very reliable, the three parameters for an ideal diagnostic. Before concluding today's lecture, I just want to share a few more approaches which scientists are trying to develop as an alternative, cheap and quick diagnostic kit. Like Abbott Laboratories in the USA has developed an isothermal amplification based kit which skip the temperature cycles of PCR and uses a single temperature to amplify the products. It's innovative, just you need to design the primers in such a way that the reaction goes on without the requirement of separate denaturation and annealing step. It is quick, within 10 to 15 minutes you will get the results. Although approved by the FDA, but still it has some glitches that needed to be covered up before it can be used widely. The other one available with us already are the antibody-based kit, the serological test, which is very useful for the prognosis of the disease. That means when the disease has spread and antibodies are produced by the affected individuals. So not before 2 weeks of the infection you will be able to detect the antibody level, the IgG or the IgM levels. They are altered only after 2 weeks of infection. So in that case, the serological tests are highly effective for the disease follow-up, but they are not always recommended for initial diagnosis. Well, that brings us to the end of the presentation. However, I would like to summarize the main points or takeaways that qPCR remains the most potent and fast emerging technique in diagnosis both communicable and non-communicable diseases. In the qPCR based diagnosis, the controls have to be appropriately designed, analyzed correctly. um, well, I sincerely appreciate your attention today. I hope the webinar was informative, and before you sign off today, please take 2 minutes to leave your feedback in the link provided about your experience with this lecture. You can share your thoughts or ask questions in the email address as mentioned here. I'll be happy to answer them. Once again, on behalf of all the coordinators of the Life Science team members, I thank you for your participation in the webinar. Have a great day ahead and stay safe. Bye.